But, we really want to understand the real Yeshua. It was several years ago, as a matter of fact, well over a decade, about 15 years ago, that I walked into the city gate of the old city of Jerusalem, and I was presented with a handbill offering me a $10,000 reward if I could answer the following questions. Now, I thought that this was, just providential. I mean, this is like a windfall from heaven, because it's more than a coincidence that I could have used $1,000, and they're offering $10,000. And here are the first two things on this. Now, remember, this is given to me by an anti-missionary group, a Jewish anti-missionary group. They want to shut the mouths of any Christians coming in who think that they're going to change the land of Israel when they come over on a tour, and just coming out of their mouth is all of a sudden going to change the land of Israel, and everyone's going to believe in Jesus and live happily ever after. Okay? So, you've got Jewish lawyers who make this up, and they're offering $10,000. Now, how many of you think that a Jewish lawyer is going to write something where it's going to be easy to collect $10,000? Exactly, right. Number one, prove from the Christian New Testament scriptures that Jesus has an ancestral lineage to King David. Again, prove from the Christian New Testament scriptures that Jesus has an ancestral lineage to King David. Now, for those of you who may not be aware of this, this is the claim. And even Yeshua himself said to the Pharisees, whose son is the Messiah? And he says, the son of David. See, he must be the son of David. To sit on David's throne, he must be the direct descendant of the king of Israel, King David. But how many of you realize, and I know many in this room do, and many people out there in cyberspace and on television around the world, some of them know and some of them don't know, that you are not going to be able to easily collect on this, because the Christian New Testament scriptures, there is no direct ancestral lineage of Yeshua to King David. It's not there. But I'm going to show you the answer, the $10,000 answer tonight. And one of the reasons why I believe that I was thwarted to a significant from getting the chronological Gospels finished because of some ancient manuscripts that had not been yet discovered. See, when the King James Version of the Bible was translated, the basis of that was what was called the Textus Receptus. Robert Estienne, also known as Stephanus, I believe it's in 1550, with his team of scholars, assembled all of the Greek manuscripts available to them, and they selected what they considered to be the most authentic, the best Greek scriptures that were available back then. They did not have access to the over 5,000 extant Greek manuscripts that we have available to us today. In fact, among those 5,000 Greek manuscripts, there are over 250,000 variations in the New Testament alone. Now, some people, when they hear that, make sure this is on, okay? Many people, when they hear that, they become afraid. 250,000 variations and 5,000 manuscripts? How can we trust it? Well, remember, the New Testament was transmitted to us in Koine Greek, common Greek, street Greek. And from one part of the empire to another part of the empire, they used the Greek language on the street just like we do in America. Up north, we use language and we use figures of speech and we use words differently than we do in the south. The east and the west are different. We choose different words according to how we need to transmit the subtle nuances of the language where we live. And that's why we have different variations in the Greek language. And we also have things where scribes would add in their own notes, put them in parentheses as they did later on, but they didn't have a footnote protocol back then, and so the scribes would make explanatory notes in the text, and that's what was transmitted down to us. These are not things to be afraid of, ladies and gentlemen. These are things to be recognized. And so when you see a difference between manuscripts that come from a family manuscripts from the 2nd and 3rd century, and then you have another group of manuscripts that comes from the 13th century, if there's a difference in there, you study the difference. And you attempt to understand where the reality is and get back to the original. And that's what why it's taken nearly 40 years, over 38 years, to compile the chronological Gospels to make sure that I am accessing the best manuscripts available, that I'm able to take care of all the apparent contradictions. And ladies and gentlemen, after all these years, I can confidently say there are no contradictions in the Gospels. There are contradictions in what we think it says. There are contradictions in translations. But we can dig back and we can solve every one of these. And I'm going to show you some manuscripts tonight that are the real treasure on this very thing. Now I want you to look at number 2 before we go on, because we're going to address both of these tonight for our worldwide audience. Number 2, prove from the Hebrew Scriptures that the prophets said that the Messiah shall be called a Nazarene. And we recognize this from Matthew. It says, Yeshua went up and dwelt in Nazareth, so it might be fulfilled, which is spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. They say, prove from the Hebrew Scriptures that the prophets said the Messiah will be called a Nazarene. Try as you might, even the Church of the Nazarene cannot find the answer to this. I mean, a worldwide denomination that names themselves after this and after this verse cannot find the answer to this. Well, I've got a hot news flash for many of you out there. The Bible was not written in Elizabethan English. Moses did not speak in the English of Chaucer, all right? It was Hebrew. And that very verse in Matthew, Papias, the disciple of John who wrote the Gospel of John, said that Matthew wrote his Gospel in the Hebrew language. We have to dig deeper, because if you want to prove from the Hebrew Scriptures he shall be called a Nazarene, you can try for the rest of your life and it will never, ever happen, because the Torah and the prophets, neither were they written in Elizabethan English. So tonight, we're going to take you into that, and so I hope that every one of you will be able to check in on the $10,000 reward when you get to on our tour in Israel this spring. See, all you have to do is have these answers, pick up your money at the gate, and your trip to Israel is free. So, there we go. So I want to start out with Matthew. In Matthew 1:1, we read, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. See, he must be the son of David if he is the Messiah. Because Messiah means anointed one. That means the anointed king of Israel, anointed by the priest. And we're not just talking about an anointed one. We are talking about the son of David who will rule from his throne and rule the earth with a rod of iron. He who sits on the right hand of the Most High, who will also be a high priest forever, not after the Levitical or Aaronic priesthood, but after the order of the Melchizedek. This is the prophecy that is in Psalm 110 that the rabbis adhere to, believe in, and Yeshua quotes it and even throws out a question to them that they are unable to answer. Where is it answered? It's answered in the chronological Gospels. Because what you read in Matthew and what Yeshua's question is and how he questions the Pharisees, unless you go back into the Psalm and back into the Hebrew language and into the culture and what the Pharisees were teaching, you will not understand why the Pharisees can't answer it, and you will not understand the answer of what Yeshua was looking for that will just change your life. But it's here in the chronological Gospels. Matthew 1:1, we read about this being the genealogy, the scroll of the genealogy of Yeshua, HaMashiach, the son of David, the son of Abraham. When you go to the end of this genealogy, we read that in verse 17, so all of the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations. From David to the carrying away unto Babylon are 14 generations, and from the carrying away unto Babylon unto the Messiah are 14 generations. That's what it says in English. That's what it says in Greek. However, we have a problem because you count them and it doesn't add up. 14, 14, 14. That is the problem. In the Greek text, the Aramaic text, and the English text, it's not there. Period. Now, I'm going to show you, because don't be afraid. Just because your English version of the Bible just happens to be in error in this place, do not be afraid. Do you think the Almighty would leave this earth without a testimony, without at least 2 witnesses that He protects His word and watches over it no matter what men do to it? Well, I believe so. Matthew 1:2 says that Abraham begat Yitzhak, Yitzhak begat Yaakov, Yaakov begat Yehuda, and his brethren. And we go right down, we can count them. Abraham's the first generation. Remember, from Abraham and to David are what? 14 generations. We can go right down the line and we can count every single generation. And Obed begat Jesse, and Yeshai begat David the king, and David is the 14th generation. So we can confidently say that all just by counting on 2 hands and 1 foot, all the generations from Abram to David are 14 generations. Then we read from David that he, the king, begat Shlomo of her who had been the wife of Urias, which is Bathsheba. And then we count on down Rehoboam, Aviah, etc., all the way down. Josias begat Jeconias and his brethren about the time they were carried away into Babylon. We see that Jeconias, again, is the 14th generation. And from David unto the carrying away unto Babylon are 14 generations. We can see it. We can count it. It's all there. And then, after they were brought to Babylon, we are now in the 12th chapter of Matthew, chapter 1. The 12th verse, Matthew chapter 1. Jeconias begat Salathiel, who begat Zerubbabel, and on down the line to Yaakov. Yaakov, the 11th generation, who begat Joseph, the husband of Miriam. Now, Joseph is the 12th generation. If Joseph is the husband of Miriam, that means they are the same generation, does it not? Okay, so we got Joseph, the husband of Mary, as it reads in the King James Version. It also reads this in the Greek version. And who is the husband of Mary, of whom was born Yeshua, which makes him the 13th generation. So, after reading this, we can all confidently see that from the carrying away into Babylon of the Messiah are what, 14 generations? No, they are not. Not in any Greek text on the planet are there 14 generations. And so in every other translation that was done, English, Japanese, Chinese, Swahili, Spanish we have to deal with, Korean, it's still only 13 generations. What is wrong with this? Because we see the Greek translation of the Scroll of Matthew records the genealogy of Yeshua through Yosef, the husband of Miriam. Is Yosef, the husband of Miriam, any relative of Yeshua? No. No relative at all. So why are we given this genealogy? Yeshua, who is the son of Abraham, the son of David, because this is the lineage, according to the English and Greek text, this is the lineage of Joseph, the husband of Miriam, who is not even related to Yeshua. We got a problem here. And there's only 13 generations. According to the authorized King James Version of the book of Matthew, and according to every extant Greek text of the book of Matthew, from the carrying away into Babylon under the Messiah are only 13 generations, and it doesn't matter how you squeeze it. Now we're going to go to Luke very quickly here, because we have another genealogy in the book of Luke. And Yeshua himself began to be about 30 years of age. Now, how does anyone begin to be about any age? See, the NIV correctly has this, and many translations add the word ministry, because that's what it's talking about. He began his ministry being about 30 years of age. Now, the word about is very important, because many people treat the word about as if it's the word peri in Greek, which is like perimeter, which is around 30 years of age. Okay? So how old was he? Oh, he could have been 27, he could have been 35. It all depends on which star of Bethlehem you want to use for his birthday. And that's how they get away with it, by using the word about as if it's the word peri. But that's not what the word is in Greek. Greek is an extremely precise mathematical language. That's why I love the Greek language. I'm so thankful that we have the New Testament in Greek, because it's a mathematically precise language. And we don't happen to have any Hebrew manuscripts of Luke, but it says Yeshua being about Hosea, which is nearing, but yet not having reached the point of. That's what that Greek preposition means. Hosea, nearing, what? 30 years of age, but not having yet reached the point of, what? 30 years of age. So this allows us to nail down when Yeshua, from his birth, now, when he begins his ministry, because this is about the time he is mikvahd in the Yarden by Yohanan ben Zakkai HaKohen, which many people call him John the Baptist. Got a hot news flash. His name wasn't John, and he wasn't a Baptist. Okay? Okay, good. So now what we're going to see, in Luke it says that Jesus was the supposed son of Joseph. Was he the son of Joseph? No, but people thought he was. Because Miriam took a road trip to see Elisheva up near Jerusalem, spent 3 months there. When she came back, already espoused to this man, she was putching out a little bit, and the wedding had not even happened yet. And if it was not Joseph's fault, then he would have had her stoned. But because he married her, everyone supposed that he was the son of Joseph, which got hooked up with Miriam before they came together for the marriage ceremony. That's what everyone thought. That's why the Pharisees said, "We be not born of fornication," implying that you were. You know, we know your family history. Only 300 people in the village of Nazareth. I mean, you're not going to hide this thing. Okay, the wedding, we can count. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months later. Oh, what a miraculous child. 5 months in gestation, a full-born baby boy. Wow, that's a real miracle. No, it was the supposed son of Joseph, who was the son of Heli. Joseph, who was the husband of Miriam, was the son of Eli, which is the son of Mathat, Levi, Melchi, Yano, Joseph, and keep on going down. So the Greek translation of the scroll of Luke records the genealogy of Yeshua through his stepfather Joseph, the husband of Miriam. So we see that both Matthew and Luke are the same lineage according to what it says. So, according to the Greek and King James Version, there is no genealogical record of Yeshua to King David. This Luke's genealogy goes Joseph all the way back to King David through his son Nathan. Not the king line. His son Nathan. Furthermore, those two records do not even agree. Here we have in Matthew, Jesus, who was the son of Miriam, who was married to, who? Joseph. His father is Yaakov, and his son, put it up there so the whole world can see, okay? Yeshua, his stepfather is Joseph, but his father is Jacob, whose father was Mathan and Eliezer. In Luke, we have Yeshua, whose supposed father was Joseph, but his father was Eli, Mathat, Levi, Melchi, Yana, and Joseph. We have two different genealogies there, but they're not adding up. So, what we are going to see is first of all, I'm going to take you into what the Aramaic translation of Matthew's gospel reads. Because why I say the Aramaic or Peshitta translation is because it is recognized. The Syrian Orthodox Church recognizes it flatly that the Aramaic Peshitta was a translation from a later Greek manuscript. They do not use it in the Syrian Orthodox Church. Now, I make it available. I have accessed it, Because why? Because back then, when you translate from the Greek back into the Aramaic, you're translating at least back into an Eastern culture language, into Aramaic, which is similar to Hebrew. And so you've got some of the same figures of speech. You've got things that just by going from Greek back into Aramaic, at least you're close to the source. But it is recognized with absolutely no question about it among the Syrian Orthodox that the Peshitta is a translation from the Greek text. And in fact, all of the later Greek additions to the later Greek text appear in the Peshitta. Why? Because it's from a late Greek manuscript. And so all the changes that they added in later centuries shows up miraculously in the Peshitta. And I'm going to show you why that's important, ladies and gentlemen, because when we come back, we are going to take you into these manuscripts, and I'm going to show you that Yeshua is indeed of the lineage of King David. But you're not going to read it in English, you're not going to read it in Greek, you're not even going to read it in Aramaic. We've got a source that we have been waiting for an entire lifetime, and what we're going to do right after we take this break is take you into that. At this time, what we're going to do is give our television audience and our cyberspace audience an opportunity to stand with this ministry. As we are broadcasting live around the world, and we are then broadcasting this on different networks around the world, in order for the truth of the gospel of the kingdom to reach you out there, it takes a lot of investment. And because of the people that are in this room that have been investing in this ministry, some of them well over a decade, because of them, we are able to broadcast to you out there. But you have to take on the responsibility. Just as these people, their lives have been changed, and so they took on the responsibility to help us get the message out to others who have not heard. Those of you who are now hearing, please take on the responsibility. Sow good seed into this ministry so we can not only continue to be with you, but we can reach out to others around the world. We're going to take a break at this point and give you an opportunity to give, and then we'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Shabat Night Live. Thank you for standing with this ministry. Thank you for helping us get this message out around the world. We are not playing games here. We are not asking you to give money so that we can just, play games. We are here to teach the Word to you. We're here to set you free from religion. We're here to make the Word of the Almighty clear to you. And if you appreciate it, then help us stay on the air where you are around the world. Because if you don't stand with us, we will be gone. It's happened to us before. It'll happen again. We are giving everything we've got. We need your help out there, so thank you. Those of you who have given, we give you the opportunity to make your gifts and your pledges to the ministry, and thank you. Thank you very much. Now I want to take you back, as we talked about before, about the Peshitta translation of Matthew's Gospel from the Greek into the Aramaic. Remember, it was first in Hebrew. Then it was translated into Aramaic. Then it was translated from the Aramaic into Greek. How do we know that? Because in the Greek and English New Testament of the Gospel of Matthew, Aramaic words still remain in the text. It could not be there in the Greek text unless it came through the Aramaic into Greek, but it was first in Hebrew. Now we go to later work, which is a Peshitta, which is a translation of the Greek, which came from the Aramaic, which came from the Hebrew, back into Aramaic again. Whew. But this is how the Peshitta translation reads. In Matthew 1:16, Jacob, or Yaakov, begat Yosef, the husband of Miriam, of whom was born Yeshua, who is called Messiah. That's how the English translation handled this particular thing. Now, I'm going to show you. What it says in the Peshitta is Yaakov begat Yosef, the Givrah of Miriam. The Givrah of Miriam. Givrah literally means mighty man. It doesn't necessarily mean husband. It doesn't mean father. It just means mighty man, and is usually used of the oldest man in the household. In my Father's house are many apartments. If it were not so, would I've told you that I go to prepare a place for you? See, when we talk about this, there are many apartments because it's not many mansions, it's apartments. Because in the East, that when your sons grow up and they then are time to marry, they build onto the house another apartment. And then they raise the next generation. And so you can have generation after generation living under the same roof. And that's why the Arab homes in Israel that we drive through on a regular basis, they are like every one is a mansion. You look at it and say, my goodness, who lives there? The Sheik of Araby? No such thing as Sheik of Araby. That's what my mother used to threaten me with. Send me to the Sheik of Araby. Anyway, no, it's just family upon family. And who is the Givrah? It's the oldest man of that household. It could be the great-grandfather, could be the father, could be the husband. It's not determined. Then we read in Matthew 1:19, Yosef, her husband being a just man, and that word is Ba'alah. So in the Aramaic, there's a difference between Yosef, the husband of Mary, the Givrah of Mary, and Yosef the Ba'alah. Now, what is Ba'alah? Baal in Hebrew, Ba'alah in Aramaic, husband. Two different words. So I have been telling you, and in the 4.5-hour video, which is Raiders of the Lost Book, the presentation I did with Nehemiah Gordon, which I had him do the center part concerning rabbinic Judaism so people can understand the Pharisees and the teachings of the Pharisees and understand Yeshua's commandment concerning do not follow the Takanot Maasim of the Pharisees. I have a former Pharisee teach that. But in that video I said that this Yaakov begat Yosef the Givrah, the mighty man of Miriam, must be translated as the father of Miriam. You remember that. You remember that video. But yet, Givrah doesn't necessarily mean father. It means mighty man. But I said it has to be, because then you have Yosef, the 12th generation, the father of Miriam, making her the 13th generation, of whom was born Yeshua, the 14th generation. Now you have the lineage of Yeshua through his only earthly parent, Miriam, who goes back to King David through Solomon, the kingly line. I said, that is what had to have been there. And so I began declaring it 10 years ago. This is what it had to be. But all I had was a retranslation of the word Givrah as my authority. That was until last year at Yom Teruah. At the end of it, Nehemiah Gordon came up to me and said, I've got a treat for you. This is what you're going to see. You're going to see one real witness. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're going to see before your eyes is in your version of the chronological Gospels. Now, many of you have it open to that page right now. This is the only place that you're going to see it in print. There are 2 people on planet Earth that know where these manuscripts are, and you have the photographs right in your hands. Ladies and gentlemen, read it and weep. Unfortunately, I do not have a pointer to show you what this is saying, but it says in this manuscript, from the second line all the way over, I can show you with my pointer right here, Yosef Avi Miriam. This is the ancient Hebrew text of Matthew's Gospel. This is the very thing that the rabbis could offer a $10,000 reward if you can show from the Christian Bible that Jesus has any ancestral lineage to King David, because they know it's not there. It's in the Hebrew Matthew. It says Yosef, Avi, the father of Miriam. And this was not found until just last year, ladies and gentlemen, secreted away in the archives of Jewish scribes, completely hidden from the Christian world. And Nehemiah Gordon, as an honest scholar who had nothing to gain from it, laid it in my hands and says, this is it. This is yours. This is why we have been waiting for. And all the trials and the tribulations and people trying to take over and steal the ministry, everything else that they did to try to stop me, I believe it was for that moment, because right at Yom Teruah, it was there within just a few days that Nehemiah's father and my father both passed away on the same day. And I have tonight, Deb, I need, I need up in, and Judith is the only one that can get that. Number one. Issue number 1. Okay? Yes, thank you. There are 2 up there. And because this particular pre-publication limited edition manuscript, there are only 1,000 of them that will be on planet Earth, is dedicated to the memory of my father, who I believe was about 30 years of age when he had his first heart attack, wasn't it? 32 years of age, and decided he was going to change his life, and he enrolled in Bible school. I thought he was going to go study the book of Hebrews. He came back from Bible school with a Hebrew manuscript, the Hebrew Scriptures. And you know, because he really wanted to know the Scriptures. And you know, at that time, just having a heart attack, he had to work extremely hard and working 90-hour weeks out at an apple orchard, running an apple orchard. And then from there, you know, if his children were ever going to go to college, if he's going to be able to take care of the family, he went to work for General Motors and worked midnight shifts and worked most of his life to make sure that this happened. And he did not get to fulfill his dream. But yet that dream is still alive in his children. And that dream was still alive to keep this in the forefront, and I believe that that is why we have it today, because my father and my mother, who started out taking me to church when I was hardly old enough to cry and wet a diaper, and yet has before us. And so I have something before the end of the evening to show you, but both Nehemiah's father and my father, right after this, passed away. We were both on the road, and could not be there at the side of our father when they passed away. But this right here is the absolute treasure. Yosef, Avi, the father of Miriam. So every time I look at that, I remember, and this will be a legacy to my father as well, to get this out to the world. You've got something in your hands, ladies and gentlemen, in this copy that you can put this in front of everyone out there in the world. You're the only ones that have got it at this point. This is very significant. Now, that's not good enough, ladies and gentlemen, because now is the second witness, because this is the second manuscript right here. Yosef, Avi, Miriam. Two of the oldest ancient Hebrew manuscripts of the Gospel of Matthew that have been hidden away in the archives of Jewish scribes, both of them carrying the correct lineage of Yeshua to King David. And once we have that, then we have the 14 generations, and everything is there. It's in perfection. And ladies and gentlemen, it only took me a little over 38 years to be able to present it to you. So here it is. But that's only one half of your $10,000 bonus. And many of you, I presented this so that you've seen some of these things before, but our audience around the world has not seen it. See, this is the proof the Almighty is still alive and moving, and His revelation is still happening. He is still, as it says, that the Holy Spirit would be sent to lead us into all truth. This is just part of it. He's actually using a Karaite scholar who's not even a believer in Yeshua to find some of these treasures. And when I saw Nehemiah, Gordon, being led by the Spirit into some of these things, you know, it broke the box that the Almighty was in, because I had him in a box. He can't do that. Well, I find out he can do whatever he wants to do, and we can enjoy the treasures thereof. Now, we've got the next thing. So we got the 14 generations, and now here's the second part of the $10,000 reward. Proof from the Hebrew Scriptures that the prophet said that the Messiah should be called a Nazarene. And so here we go. Jesus came and dwelt in the village of Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled, spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. Try as you will never find anywhere in the Torah and the prophets where he will be called a Nazarene. But we are going to see that in Isaiah, it says, beautiful and glorious shall be the tzemach, the branch of the Lord. The word tzemach is used 5 times by the prophets. Every time is translated in English with capital letters, branch. Why? Not only did the Christian scholars, but the rabbis themselves recognized every time the word tzemach is used by the prophets, it is a direct reference to the Messiah. Every single time, bar none. That's why we have 5 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and the Revelation. This is the Messiah as the King, the servant, the Son of Man, the Son of God, and the Almighty Judge. And every one of those perspectives have to be melded together. You have to see every incident recorded by every one of them in context, and then you have the whole picture. You have everything we can know about Yeshua. You don't have to make up any fairy tales. You don't have to have 3 stupid men flying, going through the desert all by themselves with this treasure, not protected by a large armed caravan, because that's how they would have been out there. Ladies and gentlemen, you get it in context, and it makes all the sense in the world. And as it says in Isaiah 11:1, there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. Ladies and gentlemen, Isaiah said he'll be a tzemach, but he said he'll be a particular type of branch. And that word tzemach is, first of all, there shall come forth a chother, which is a living shoot out of the stem, the gazah, the cut down trunk of Jesse, King David's father, and a branch, and now the word branch is netzer. A netzer shall grow out of his roots. Now, what is a netzer? It is a Hebrew agricultural term that applies only to an olive tree. An olive tree, after it no longer produces fruit, they will cut down the trunk. But that does not terminate the life of that plant. A netzer is a shoot that grows out of the original root system of an olive tree, but it springs up later and somewhat distant from the original trunk. And so, here we have on the side of the Mount of Olives. Here you see the trunk of a tree that's about 2,000 years old. But over 1,500 years later, out of the original root that no longer has any life nor produces any fruit, you see a branch that grew out of the root. That is a netzer. I can show you every olive yard in the land of Israel, and there will be netzers coming out of the ground. And that is what it is speaking of right there. That is a netzer. And the Messiah will be a netzer. A netzer. Yeshua came and dwelt in the village of Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophets. He shall be called a netzer. Not a Nazarene. People think a Nazarene like a Nazarite vow. No, the words only are similar looking in English. They're not even the same root in Hebrew. He's a netzer. He is a branch that comes out. He is not only the tzemach, the branch, the Messiah, but he is a specific type of branch who comes up, springs up at distant from the original trunk, who springs up at a later date and a later time. Two families of Notzrim, or Netzers, from the lineage of King David, and we see that David begat Shlomo, and we go on down the lineage, and we see that Yaakov begat Joseph, the father of Miriam, whom was born the Messiah. We see in Nazareth, we have the lineage of King David who comes down from Solomon to Miriam and then to Yeshua. But there's another family there. Yeshua was a direct descendant of King David through his only earthly parent, but it says Joseph ben Eli, Miriam's husband. This is Joseph, who is of the lineage of King David through Nathan, his other son. Now, how did these get into northern Israel? How did these two families get there? They got into northern Israel by this. The statue of Zeus. This particular statue of Zeus was taken from the Greek pantheon. When the Romans conquered Greece, they took this statue of Zeus out of the pantheon, put it in Rome. Now it sits in St. Peter's Cathedral, and for centuries people have been kissing the foot of the statue of Zeus born on December 25th because they're told it's Peter. This is not Peter, it's Zeus. And when they put the statue of Zeus in the temple and then declared Zeus to be God, that is when the lineage of King David had to get out of Bethlehem and move up into the north and name their village Netzeret, because they knew they were of the lineage of King David, sprouting up at a distant place and at a later time, and out of the stock of King David came forth this very thing.